Thanks for tuning in. This is Midas Drop, and we are Midas Print. Today we have a special guest, Nasika, and I met this person through networking. As you remember, that I'm an advocate for networking, and I'll let her introduce herself.
All right. Well,
Nasika.
thank you for having me, Michael. My name is Nasika Cox. I'm a commercial lending broker. I actually do quite a few things in business. I'm a financial services professional, but my main modality would be commercial lending. So I help business people source capital. So pretty much I sell money, but particularly for real estate investors.
Mhm.
Real estate is my love. So I've been in a real estate scope for quite some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also a realtor, commercial and
Mhm.
residential, based in the Houston area, but I broker business loans all throughout the nation.
Oh wow. And also, I see that you're in the life insurance as well, and I see though some events of your own in the financial sector. Tell us about that.
Yes, so the financial literacy piece of what I do, it's
Mhm.
really more of a passion of mine. It's my way of educating the community. I'm also a community builder, um, just in the regard of helping, especially minority communities,
Mhm.
become more self-aware when it comes to mindset, right? Because mindset is 90% of success in life,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Especially in
Hit it
business.
right on the nose.
Right. So I do teach a lot about that as it relates to finances, our
Mhm.
finances, how we view money, how
Mhm.
how we're in relationship with money, how we feel about things like checking our bank account,
Yeah.
because those are the foundational things when it comes to building money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if
Mhm.
we can't be proper stewards of what we have, then how can we dream bigger? Because it's definitely possible,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age. I particularly like to speak to Black women because we are, I would say, kind of leading the charge in our community when it
Yeah.
comes to being among the most educated and higher earners right
Mhm.
now. So, when it comes to us managing our finances, us being the biggest consumers is not going to, get us to
Yeah.
where we need to be as a community. So,
Mhm.
whether it be online, I do webinars. And also, if I'm ever invited to speak anywhere, whether it be a church or a nonprofit organization, I actually spoke at a women's summit this past weekend just
Mhm.
about how our mindset and, well, when it comes to our self worth and our net worth, how they're interconnected.
Yeah.
So, um, those are just things that I do to get in front of people, also, so that people can get to know more about me. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because I also believe that we're only three people away from our next client or our next big connection. So
Wow.
you may not need my services, but maybe somebody you know and somebody they know and somebody they
Yeah.
know. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say I would need your service. I feel like
not
for
right
me,
now.
yeah, not
Yeah,
right
right,
now.
right, right.
For
Exactly.
me, it's like I need you in my corner because you said you're into commercial lending, and I met you at the
Right.
multifamily event, and
Exactly.
I was like, yeah, I need to keep this person. But right now, where I'm at, I'm kind of like the little guy,
Right. But
but I respect it, and I feel like I need to give as much as possible to you because of the position you're in, and then where I want to be.
mhm.
You're also gonna remember that because it's impressionable. And another thing I want to ask, like, you host these events for women, but I was also wondering, like, are men allowed in those spaces too?
Of course,
Because
of
I
course.
was
They're
like,
they're not just for women.
yeah,
I did a financial literacy course over the summer. It was a
hmm
summer series in Third Ward at the historic Blue Triangle, which was the first Black YMCA in Houston.
wow,
They recently refurbished it and opened up their doors again earlier this year. But a lot of people that are in Third Ward now aren't
hmm
the original residents, so a lot of people
okay,
don't know about it. So I kind of helped to bring awareness to the community center itself.
hmm
So the financial literacy series was all throughout the summer. I did one in June, July, and August, and that was for the entire family. We even had
hmm
activities for the kids. We were giving out like piggy banks.
hmm
Comerica Bank jumped on board and they sponsored the
yeah,
event. So yeah, it ended up being much bigger than I initially planned. But that's how this works. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you put the vision together and then other people jump on board and it ends up becoming, bigger and better than you'd ever planned. But, sometimes we don't even make the effort to do it,
Mhm.
especially because we feel like, you know, especially when we're by ourselves, that
Yeah.
it's not possible. But in my experience, um, once you make the effort and you put
Mhm.
action toward it, it tends to come together. It's just like, for me, it's a spiritual thing.
Okay.
Mhm.
So
But to answer your question, of course, men are welcome. Men, kids, I try to customize things to the audience. I wanna speak to young adults, college students, because I feel
Yeah.
like they can make the most difference,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to growing money because, um, the younger you start, the easier it is, right? The more
Yes.
compound, um, that money becomes over time.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And reason I say like a man like invited because for me, um, I like to just go in those spaces and get a different perspective.
Yeah.
See, my mom was in the military, and I see that you're in the Navy. My mom served 21 years, and I know Veterans
Awesome.
Day is, I think, Saturday, right?
Yes,
So happy
yes.
Veterans Day ahead of time.
Well, thank you.
Uh, but my mom was basically the breadwinner, and I respect that too. And I was happy she was. But I just like to be in that space because my mom only was in the military. She wasn't
Mhm.
in any other profession. And to get that perspective of like women could be soft in other areas, because my mom was soft when she needed to and when she couldn't.
That's awesome.
And just to get that perspective and like understand that we're in a new age and that men and women have to really work together, not what they call it the gender war. I
Right.
don't like that sound because I'm like, I don't fight women anyway. So if somebody's gonna argue with me, I'm not even gonna go with them and argue with
Mhm.
them because that takes too much energy. And like you said, everything's spiritual. If we gonna argue, then it's gonna become spiritual warfare. And I don't want to ever get to that point. So being able to be in those rooms with them type of women that actually want to like go up in the field, go up financially, I want to be around those type of women because it actually they're still equal. And like you
Mhm.
say, your network is your network. So
Right.
just getting in a room, being around those type of women is a different connect.
Mhm.
Um,
That's
and like
awesome.
in the realm of men, it's kind of like men are like kind of like going against each other, you know, egos and just that whole battle. So for me, I'm not trying to compete. I just
Mhm.
want to be in a room where I can grow and get a perspective and then go from there. You know what I'm saying?
I definitely do, and I
Yeah.
wanna extend a huge thank you to your mother for her service.
Mhm.
She's pretty much spent an entire career in the
Yeah.
service, which is not easy when you're
Yeah.
raising children. I couldn't even do it. I did a couple enlistments and I was just like, no, I want to focus on my family.
Yeah.
But it was one of the best decisions I ever made because I was able to go to school,
Mhm.
get my degree, especially here in Texas. Texas is very veteran friendly.
Yeah.
And even my children, I have a college age son now who's still reaping the benefits of my
Mhm.
service. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but it's not easy. So, hats off to your mom and to your family too, because the
Mhm.
entire family essentially serves. Because when she's on
Yeah, yeah,
deployment,
yeah.
then other people have
Military
to step
brat.
in. Exactly. You're moving around every couple of years. So, yes, awesome. And I also want to commend you for, everything that you just stated. In the way that I met you, you stood out from everyone else in the room.
Mhm.
And I've seen you in many different
Yeah.
spaces. It's funny, we ran into each other several times before we
Yeah.
even got to this point. But you know, I was introduced to you like as an investor in a sense, and you
Yeah.
were kind of, just soaking up the knowledge. But people who have, I would say, traveled the road less travel, right? Because for your age group,
Yeah.
typically you
You
shouldn't or
shouldn't.
wouldn't be doing the type of things that you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it really is.
Exactly. But you stand out because you're, of a different um, character in that
Yeah.
sense, right? What's not really the norm these
Mhm.
days. So hats off to you for that, really. And I completely agree with everything you said. Like, men and women, we need to be in partnership, especially
Yeah,
Black men and women,
all the time.
because we have some time to make up for. And, a lot of powerful men that I talk to, I work with a lot of investors who
Yeah.
are wealthy. They always say, when it comes to their staff and the people that have
Mhm.
helped them, they've always been women.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So
For sure.
most powerful men tend to surround themselves with women because, like you said, there isn't competition and ego
Yeah.
involved. But I would love to see us work together more,
Mhm.
honestly. But societal wise, it tends to be like a competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Cause,
that's
cause people bring, uh I think people bring, like, their societal issues, the way they see
mhm.
the society as a whole to those events. Well, really, you should come in as a new person to those events. So when you come in and when you learn things and you become a sponge, you actually become a sponge.
Right.
Because a sponge that's already soaked everything in can't really receive much. It has to be squeezed after that.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, like when you met me at the first event, I was like a sponge. I said whatever I think is gonna go my way or whatever I think is supposed to happen, I just need to let it go. As soon as I
Mhm.
walk in, that's exactly what happened.
Right.
It's like we're not demanding any change in our life because we're steady um holding on to what we want to get out of things. But realize that people cannot be controlled. The only thing that can be controlled is your mindset and your choices.
Right.
So
We can only control ourselves.
yeah. So like you said, a spiritual thing. And you
Mhm.
mentioned spiritual. And I wonder where that stems from. Did you have like
Um,
a spiritual journey? Or are you still on one?
Definitely. Still
Okay.
on one. Definitely. I've
Tell us about
had
it. I love a good journey. I love a spiritual journey for sure.
spiritual journey. I think my spiritual journey began in my childhood,
Mm.
honestly. I wouldn't say I had a pretty rough childhood, but it
Hmm.
wasn't traditional. My mother and father weren't married. Plus, I come from immigrant family, so I'm first generation American. Both my
Mm.
parents are from the Caribbean.
Okay.
So my mom was from Jamaica. She's since passed on, and my dad, who's still living, was from a tiny island by the name of Montserrat. Most people have never heard of it.
Montserrat?
Montserrat. It's a British colony. It's like a tiny, tiny dot on the map. That's how small it is. Yeah.
It
So,
does sound
yeah.
British.
hmm
It really does.
So that was my foundation, and
Mhm.
them coming to the US, Brooklyn of all places. I was born in Brooklyn, New York in the 80s. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was not the place to be. It was not a safe
Yeah.
place to be. My dad had big dreams,
Mhm.
to purchase real estate and live the American dream. And
Yeah.
he worked for 7 days a week, pretty much.
Mm.
So, they sent me back to the islands to live with family members, which a lot of Caribbean and foreign families did back in those days.
Yeah.
So they could just focus on, working and making money and saving.
Okay.
And they
And was it
figured that,
because of the climate of like
yeah,
danger? Okay.
exactly. And also, the islands are just, it's just better for
Yeah.
kids. It's a better environment to
Period.
raise children in.
Yeah.
So, not really having my immediate family around me, um, and kind of feeling in some ways, um, especially because those were my primitive years,
Mhm.
from the age of birth to like 7 years old.
Yeah.
Those are your primitive years.
Oh, yeah,
Those are the
yeah.
years that kind of form your personality. Um, I think I just learned how to go within
Mhm.
from a really early age,
Yeah.
learn how to kind of make myself happy and put things into perspective.
Mhm.
Plus, I always felt like I was divinely protected,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, from certain things. And
Mhm.
um, so always had that sense of knowing of the divine, something greater than myself.
Yeah.
And then just throughout my life, going through different ups and downs.
Mhm.
Of course, when I enlisted in the service at 18, I thought I was gonna be stationed in Norfolk,
Oh,
Virginia, because that's the
yeah.
biggest naval base, but I got stationed all the way overseas in Sasebo, Japan. Yes,
Wow.
which was a huge culture shock for me.
Yeah, that's a huge
Um,
learning lesson for sure.
exactly. So many journeys,
Uh-huh.
living in so many different
Yeah.
places, being
What was that like
independent.
though? I've been to Germany
Yeah,
and that was a culture shock too. I was like, they don't do nothing on Sundays. Like,
I know, the
that's
whole
against the
world
law.
shuts down.
I was
Yeah.
like, nah.
It made me feel like I never fully belonged anywhere. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because I never really felt like I found my community, even now.
Uh-huh.
But it helped me to be very comfortable alone.
Yeah.
It helped me to be
Right.
very comfortable with myself
Mhm.
to where I feel like I could blend in anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's been my experience, honestly.
Mhm.
It's helped to open doors for me. I've never felt like I just need to be with Black folks or I just need to be with
Yeah.
Caribbean folks. I know a lot of people that live that way. I know a
Mhm.
lot of friends that I grew up with, they've never left
Yep.
those areas in Brooklyn because they're predominantly Caribbean communities.
Yeah.
And I've lived all over the world. I feel like it's opened up my awareness, to where now I can see that that was a part of my purpose to be
Yeah.
able to connect with so many different types of people.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes
Um,
sense. I feel that same way because growing up as a military brat,
yeah.
um, we moved around a lot. I think I moved around. My first place that like boosted my experience was living in Alaska.
Mhm.
It was like living in another country. Even though it's part
Yeah,
of the
I
states,
know.
they only got two cities. They
I,
got Anchorage and Fairbanks. I was like, what? That
and
I'm
then the
older, that sounds
whole
bizarre.
like nocturnal, what is it with the time difference?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
that's a
night,
completely
but as a
different way of
kid, you
life.
don't think
Yeah.
about that. You're like, "Oh, this is cool.
And
You
you're
get to go
living
to school,
amongst
it's dark."
bears and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
moose. And, it was just weird because when I came back to I guess I would say I came back to the States,
Mhm.
a lot of kids thought I lived in igloos. It's like, "What?" And the kids that lived there only been to one place, which is right across, it's like
Mhm.
it was Monroe, West Monroe. It's like just a bridge away. That was the
Right.
only place they'd been to. And when I tell them I've been to Georgia, Oklahoma, because my sister was born there. I've been to Dallas
Mhm.
because I was born there. It's like, what? Where
Yeah.
have you been? And then I've been to Missouri and Kentucky, and that's where I graduated high school, Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Okay.
But my last place that actually made me feel how you felt was overseas in Germany, because
Mhm.
like all the other places, like in America, it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I already know what I'm gonna get. When I went
Right.
to Germany, oh,
Completely different.
completely different. Like
Mhm.
Sundays were shut off, certain things you couldn't do.
Right.
Um, you
Also,
couldn't
as
go
like
in a
an American,
restaurant, yeah,
yeah.
unless you paid for something to use the
Mhm.
restaurant. I'm like, what? It was a huge culture shock, and it, like, totally, like, flipped my whole perception on the world. I was
Mhm.
alone, but I also was learning to do things, like learning
Mhm.
languages. It made me wanna learn because I was like, "Yo, I don't know anything." It made me realize I don't know anything,
Right.
but I was
You
19
had
at the
to
time.
adapt.
Yeah, I had to
Mhm.
adapt, but it was only for, like, 3 months, and I came back to go to college here,
Mhm.
and when I think about it, I wish I would just stayed uncomfortable in Germany and stayed there and went to school. Now that I know what I know, I'm
I
like,
understand. I feel that way sometimes too. Like
yeah,
I don't know how much longer I'll be here in Texas because now even though I've been here the
yeah.
longest, um, I'm so accustomed to kind of like living that nomad life. You
Yeah,
know
how
what I
long you
mean?
been here though?
10 years.
10?
Yeah, this is the longest I've
I
ever been somewhere.
Yeah, 5
Yeah.
years in Houston, I'm like, "What?" It just passed by, I'm like, "I'm already ready to leave," be honest with you, I'm like
Yeah.
but I have a son, so I'm kinda like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's the kids. The kids ground
I'll
you.
have to hit a jackpot or something
Mhm.
to even make that happen for sure, like the lottery, I think that'd be the only
Yeah.
way, but, I'm working towards that to where I can actually move, um, and
And
actually homeschool my child. I don't wanna have my child
in the school
in the
system.
schools because I'm a teacher. And I know exactly what goes on. I know exactly the type of
Yeah.
energy that kids give off to other kids, and
Mhm.
you know they don't do that with their parents.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I'm a huge advocate for it. And I've seen like how kids like actually grow when they are taught by their parents.
Yeah. Kids
Yeah.
that are homeschooled are definitely more intellectual.
Yeah.
And of course, because certain homeschool programs require you to like get out in the community and
Mhm.
do different things, even travel. Um, the only thing about homeschooling that I've always been concerned about is
Yeah.
socialization
Okay.
because I feel like some homeschool children, especially in their adolescence, can be a little socially awkward.
Yeah.
And you have to have a good balance,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to just thriving in life, right?
Yeah.
Because as you know, um, most of, I guess, success stories of people who are successful, and you know that also from personal experience has a lot
Mhm.
to do with your relationships,
Yeah,
the people
it
that you're
does.
connected to. Um, so I think that's what college is for, honestly.
Yeah,
That's what I think college is for.
yeah.
Less for the degree itself, but more for the social circles.
That's definitely what it was for me.
Mhm.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was. When I think about it, um, cause
Yeah.
school should have ended.
Yeah.
I think at ninth grade, maybe.
Yeah.
Honestly, at ninth grade, maybe. Cause once I think when you're like smart enough to know
Mhm.
like it's repeating itself, that's where it
Exactly.
becomes okay. This is I just want to get it over with.
And there's so much self-education that's required too,
Yeah,
because higher education institutions are pretty outdated.
yeah.
So by the time you graduate,
Mhm.
like there's, a whole,
A
you
whole
know,
span of
e-
new things coming along. You're
exactly. Yeah,
like,
like
man,
AI. I know they're not teaching about AI in colleges. That's what
they
they
just
should
they just now
be.
talking about digital marketing. Nah, just talking
That
about it.
right. And that's what they need to be learning,
Yeah, they
right?
need to be learning that.
And that's another reason why I do the financial literacy workshops because it's something they don't even teach in college.
They don't teach it at all.
Yeah. So many
Eh,
people graduate not knowing how to manage their
yeah,
money.
but knowing how to like rack up credit card debt,
Exactly.
what else? Student loans. Cause it's funny, I had the GI Bill, but I was still taking out student loans. I don't know what I was thinking. So that's a funny story because I was already taught like
Mhm.
I think my big issue was with the whole financial literacy thing. So I had somebody that I had talked to for a budget, but it wasn't my own parent. It
Mm.
wasn't my mom. It was actually this odd lady I never even met before. I went in there with her and she was telling me about finances, and I'm like, okay, what is this? And it's like weird because it's like it's not my mom telling me this, it's another lady telling me this, pushing
Yeah.
across the table. And it's kind of like she asking me to stab myself.
Right. So she
Basically,
didn't have the credibility
she
probably for
she
you
probably had
to
the credibility as
for
far as
you.
like for an adult that actually lived their
Mhm.
life. But for me, it was more important that my parent did it. It was like more of a private
Yeah.
thing because I'm confused.
And that's the biggest thing in our community is
Yeah,
that it's not something that we discuss.
too afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, we're too afraid or we don't have the knowledge ourselves. Where in other cultures, those are the things that they talk about at the dinner table.
Yeah.
You know what I
Oh
mean?
yes.
And so many of us don't even sit at the dinner table
Yeah.
anymore. You know what I mean?
And I'm
So,
learning that too.
yeah, that's
Cause
a big thing with your son.
the last thing,
Mhm.
the last event, the multifamily event we were at,
Yeah.
you were talking to a guy. He was like, I think he was short stature. He was Indian, right?
Mhm.
And he had a fund. I think it was
Yeah,
like in
he's a
the
commercial
millions.
realtor actually. I've met him
For
quite a
real?
few times. Yeah.
Oh, he wasn't trying to talk about that. He just worried about what
Yeah.
he had going on. But I was like, I wonder how he got those funds.
Mhm.
I think how he got it was through his
Yeah,
people.
they're foreign funds. I've
Yeah,
talked to him
foreign
about them
funds.
before,
Okay.
and I think they're Pakistani equity fund.
Yeah. See, they
Mhm.
they definitely talk about money.
Oh, yeah.
And they talk about find somebody who's, has a skill
Mhm.
for it and then get him to go do it.
Exactly, and they keep everything within their community, and
Yeah.
that's one thing I admire about other communities, how they
Yeah.
do things, and I want the same for us.
So I understand because I understand about keeping funds in because I understand like a susu.
Okay,
Um,
you talking
my son's
some Caribbean
mom,
terms right
yeah, my
there.
son's mom is first generation
What country?
African American. Um, Saint Lucia,
Saint Lucia,
Saint
okay. This
Croix.
is a Caribbean term for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
learned about what a susu. I was like, what is a susu? And then um,
My
so
grandmother
we
used to
did it
do
during
sisters all the
yeah we did it during
time.
COVID, and I was like a susu. I was like, what? I have never heard of this. I was like, "Bruh, if we had the same thing or like this whatever
I know,
term,
exactly. I'm sure maybe back in the day,
nobody's like marketing the
yeah,
community though. That's the crazy
I
thing.
know, I know, but everything stems from systemic racism.
Yeah, and then traumatic experiences,
Exactly.
Black
And
Wall
then the
Street.
fear of
Yeah,
trying to do something and having it taken away from us
Mhm.
again. Um, and I feel like maybe that was my saving grace in a sense because I'm first
Yeah.
generation American, because of how tight knit our community was, even in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Because even though it wasn't Jamaica and Montserrat, the way that we function in Brooklyn was just like how they did in the islands.
Mm.
And the way that I function in my household, even as a girl growing up, is just like they do in the islands. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I left New York, essentially when I joined the military, that I realized that there was more to me because of me being black.
Yeah.
And that was just based on other people's reaction to me.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand.
Moving here, honestly, was a huge culture shock for me because I had to prove myself before people would even take me seriously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but, Houston's a lit city. Houston is really
Yeah.
the place to be right now. It's the land of opportunity. So,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
no slight to Houston or Texas, but I'm just sharing my experience.
Yeah.
And again, being first generation American, um, my perspective was just a lot different because I never thought that I was any less than.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it makes sense because Houston is kinda like a boiling pot of cultures. Like,
it
everywhere you
is.
go, I think you go to Stafford, you, like, in India, it
Right,
kinda feels
right.
like, for real. I was
Yeah.
like, "What?" Because me, I'm, like, new. This was, like, 3 years ago, I was working for Amazon. I remember, like, going to certain areas, I'm like,
Mhm.
"Where am I at?"
Hillcroft 59, that's the
Yeah,
Indian Pakistani community. Then you have your
exactly.
Nigerians,
Yep, then you have the
um,
Iraq, Afghanistan.
mhm,
I'm like, "Bro,
the
what
Arab
is going on?"
community.
I was kinda
Yeah.
nervous 'cause I'm like, I don't know any of these languages, but I see, like, the language up there, I'm like,
Mhm.
but you go in the store, they speak English, so it's like,
Exactly,
it ain't bad
yeah.
as it was, but it's like,
And of course, we have our huge Hispanic
yeah.
community.
Oh,
Texas used
yes.
to be a
Yes.
part of Mexico,
Yes.
so yeah. That's what I love about it,
Oh,
honestly.
yeah. I'm glad I took Spanish when I was, in high school and then in college,
Mhm.
but I like to touch on that word you use, extensive, being able to be extensive, because for me, um, had I not been extensive in my relationship as far as meeting my, son's mom, I would never know there was a difference. I would never known
Mm.
that. She would've just been like, I would've assumed that
Right,
she
right.
was African American,
You're
and that's how
right.
her family was. But when I actually got to know her and she was Caribbean, I never even heard of that term. To be honest, I
Mhm.
was like, I never heard of Caribbean. She's talking about, like, her great-great-grandpa's Indian. I'm like, "What? What are you
Mhm.
talking about?" So, when I got to know and understand, like, everything's, like, totally different, I'm like, "What? They so tight-knit, it's
Mhm.
ridiculous." Like, they deal with people that speak like them, like,
Mhm.
broken French, patois.
Right, patois.
It was crazy. I'm like, "Now I wanna learn more." Now I wanna
Now I'm
learn more.
intrigued more even about
Yes.
just our people in general, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
totally.
it made me look at my community because 'cause I'm obviously, like, maybe 12th generation African
Mhm.
American. Even coming to figure out that whole history behind that is, skewed as well.
Mhm.
I'm also Indian, like, American Indian, and it's just crazy to, like, to ask. I'm always questioning myself, "What happened?" Kinda like Malcolm X
Right,
or Huey Newton type of thing, because I found
right.
out Huey Newton's from my hometown in Monroe, Louisiana.
Mm.
And it's like, what happened? Why it happened? Why are we still here?
Mhm.
What will it take? Finances, obviously, but also kind of like the movie Birth of a Nation. I feel like has to be another birthing of a nation and letting go of um, colored,
Right,
or
right.
because then there's another thing called paper genocide, which I got into because I'm steady searching for it and trying to figure out, like, why on paper are we this, but to us we feel like we're human beings. And it's because during those times of, like, slavery, there was paper genocide, not just just killing off people. It was paper genocide as well.
Mhm.
And that's where the confusion becomes so evident. But then again, it becomes even more evident because they tie us into this thing,
Mhm.
putting us in a box. But all in all, we're so much more than just being a color, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, that's why I kept going deeper. And I'm like, we more than that.
Of
That's why I like the
course.
word extensive because we have to be extensive as being the people that came from struggle, that
Mhm.
struggled the hardest, that are dealing with systematic racism. We have to be extensive. We have to think further than what they gave us and what we're being told in
Mhm.
schools. That's why self-education, like you said, is so important. It's actually
Right.
more important than um college.
It
Like
is.
when I look back, I said, man, I spent $30,000 on top of
Yeah.
buying
It
books that I'm never gonna read again.
But do you think it was a waste?
I don't think the connections I made were a waste.
The degree you have, it wasn't a waste
The
either.
degree I
It's
have,
just a tool.
yeah, it is a tool
Yeah,
because I wouldn't be a teacher,
exactly.
which I found out my purpose is being a teacher through the Boys and Girls Club, which was work study.
Mhm.
But to say I wouldn't say that. I'll just say that some things aren't worth paying too much for
Mhm.
in that sense.
I agree.
That's just ridiculous.
Well, higher education in this country specifically
Yeah.
is grossly overpriced.
Yes.
In other countries, it's not. Canada,
And that's how they get ahead.
places like the Netherlands, um, I forget the other country that I'm thinking about now,
Mhm.
but and it's crazy how it works because we would because I used to work extensively in corporate relocation in the real
Uh-huh.
estate sector there, working with expats.
Yeah.
So these huge corporations, oil and gas companies, Shell, Exxon, I had contracts with all of them. They would import, I don't even know if that's the right word I'm using, talent from other countries like Canada,
Okay.
like the Netherlands. What is that other country's name? But anyway, countries where the higher education was so much cheaper, essentially free,
Yeah.
um, but they would be able to, import these employees that had specialty degrees, usually in the sciences, to come work here
Yeah.
and make, seven, eight figures.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
and would never hire locally educated
Yeah.
people. Now there's laws in place and nonprofits that are kind of trying to work against that. But the thought of, other people in other countries being able to, reach the heights of their careers
Yeah.
with much less invested because of how
Mhm.
their countries function, and they can come to the US and capitalize on the
Yeah.
opportunities here that people that are homegrown or, Native
Mhm.
Americans um, cannot,
Yeah.
because of course a lot of people can't afford to, get a master's degree in
Mhm.
chemistry or geology, or you know what I
Yeah.
mean, or maybe not
Right.
have the resources to do that.
Right.
So that's how that functions as far as business. But, to go back to what you were saying, we have to understand, and the reason why, you function the way you are is because you are self-aware, right? And
Yeah.
because of the independence that you've been able to experience throughout your life, right?
Mhm.
So you are an independent thinker.
Yes.
A lot of people are not independent thinkers because um, we're not bred to be that way
Mhm.
as Americans. Of course, that's why the system of education and even higher education, um, and what we buy into is, you get your higher education, you get a good job. A lot of that is broken now because people are seeing, because so many people are educated and
Yeah.
overqualified, that that's not what's creating, the success that we desire. It's more about creating something new,
Yeah.
being innovative,
Mhm.
and being in the business for yourself, because we understand now through social media and the younger generation just speaking out,
Mhm.
that um, what's going to create that generational wealth has to do with getting in alignment with the business of America.
Yeah.
right? And America is just a huge corporation.
Mhm.
That's why slavery lasted for as long as it did. You know,
Yeah.
slavery took place in other countries too.
Yeah.
Britain they were the originators of slavery,
Yeah.
but they ended it much sooner than America did because
Yeah.
America was a newer country, and of course, they needed
Somebody gotta
slaves
build it.
exactly to
Yeah.
build it. And it lasted so much longer because people got greedy. There was just
Mhm.
so much money involved.
Yeah.
And that history continued even to today. If you think about our entertainment industry
Mhm.
and how it's all just a money making tactic.
Yeah.
So when you understand how that works, then you can get plugged in to play the game. You know what I mean? Once you
Mhm.
understand your position. Unfortunately, the wealth in this country was built on the backs of black people.
Yeah.
And when it comes to our community, the self-awareness is what needs to take place first.
Yeah.
Because when we think about slavery, and especially in the South that I've noticed, and I'm only saying that because I grew up in New York, so I know the difference.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we tend to make or feel like slavery is something that is a blotch in our history,
Yeah.
makes us less than. I look at it as a superpower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
if our ancestors were able to overcome everything that they were and they were still uh faithful people,
Yeah.
still spiritual people, still traditional
Mhm.
communities, and we were still able to do so much with so many obstacles against us.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? We didn't know if we were going to live from one day to the next,
Yeah.
and we were still able to do so much and overcome so much and thrive in so many ways that we have.
Yeah.
I think it really shows us that we are, in many ways, superior.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But so many of us don't understand that.
Mhm.
So, not until we understand who we truly are can we come together and function like we need to.
Yeah.
Until then, we're going to continue to fight each other and compete against each other and feel like we're victims.
Mhm. The victim mentality
Exactly.
is probably one of the worst plagues that floods the community today.
Mhm.
I think by far. Of course, trauma does, but trauma is supposed to be like the it's supposed to be like walking through darkness to get to the light. That's how I feel like trauma is. 'Cause I
Mhm.
think everybody deals with trauma.
Yeah,
But for
very true.
me, trauma was exactly what I said. It was like walking through the darkness to find the light. When you find the
Mhm.
light, be enlightened. And we have an incredible story, but if you don't claim your story, somebody else will claim your story, and then it
Right.
become his story.
Mhm.
But when you tell your story, it becomes my story, and you get to own it, and nobody else can own it. Then if nobody else own your story, they don't own you. They don't own what surrounds that story, the
Mhm.
environment that was created around that story. That's why um, sometimes I feel like I created my platform because I want people to tell their story
Right.
and own the story. Because when I ask people like, why y'all don't take any interest in your story, nobody else is gonna live that story.
Right. Crafting your story.
Yeah, and like, well, I don't feel like my life is any interest. How do you know? It's like what 5, 6 billion people in the world. Who cares what you
Right.
think at this point? Sometimes you got to think about what is going to stick.
Mhm.
It could be you could throw a million darts at a wall to hit the target until it hits the middle.
Mhm.
What if it takes 999,000 darts just to hit that target?
Right.
Who cares? And so that's what I think about a story and branding the story. And I feel like that's what you're saying. Like
Mhm.
the our people that are dealing with this, if we don't own up to our story and stop being victims and actually play superhero for once,
Mhm.
um, we can never build that army that has a
Right.
story and living it out, right?
Mhm.
Um, and
Totally.
huh?
I said totally. Yeah, we got to own our own story And you talk about trauma, we've all experienced trauma.
Yeah.
But some of us, we get stuck in our trauma
Oh, yeah.
and it becomes,
It's
a
scary.
part of our identity, and that becomes the story, the
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah. The story is the trauma,
Exactly.
and not you telling the story about the trauma and then
Yes.
moving on with the story and building it.
Mhm. And then
Um,
everything extends from that trauma, and it essentially controls your
yeah,
life.
and then we got phantom trauma, which only comes from movies they make, which
Mhm.
probably is not for me, I feel like for me when I'm watching like slave movies or I'm watching movies about slavery, I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way that actually went down
Well, you can't
because
identify with it because
yeah, I
it's
can't
not our
because
time.
it's not the story that I think is really out there. Most of the time, the
Mm.
story is in the book. And what they say, if it's in the book, what's the name ain't gonna read it. And I took that and I read what I said. That makes more sense than watching a movie film because a movie film has color, but books that have been written during the time when it was happening don't have any color.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm like, I'm not taking this movie as truth because it's entertainment.
It's it it's essentially someone's story if
Yeah.
you think about it, right? It wasn't everyone's experience back
Yeah.
in those times, right?
Mhm.
But it definitely went down like that for some people.
Yeah. It's just for me, it's like for me, I get so deep into movies where I mess it up for myself because it's not that I'm angry, it's just I'm trying to be so um aware that I'm
Mhm.
like, who's the director? What's the director's history? Because
You want all the ins and
yeah,
outs.
because the person who makes the movie created the story, and the
Right.
person who created the story got it from somewhere. Who's the sources?
Mhm.
And so that's why I'm always thinking, and that's why I can't ever go to movies with people. I always go alone because I would destroy the movie. And I tell people that all the time, like,
You make it uncomfortable for everybody else.
I make it uncomfortable afterwards. So you get to enjoy it, then I, basically break it down, then probably
Mhm.
at least feel like, okay, well, Mike, he really be watching. He don't just be watching just to have fun and entertainment.
Mhm.
Cause that's the history.
Right.
But my thing is you gotta understand the history being really told because you watching it. It's just like watching the news, but then actually reading a news article and having to read several of them just to get to the actual truth.
Right. And sometimes we don't even
We
know.
don't even
Right,
know.
right, right.
So it makes it hard. And then I if we don't teach this to the future,
Mhm.
they gonna just take it as face value.
I think the younger generation is the exact opposite. They don't believe
Yeah.
anything.
They don't be like,
They
"That's
don't
fake."
believe or trust anything, any power of authority. Like, in my generation, we were raised
Yeah.
to respect the government
Yep.
and,
They don't.
yeah.
I see it. I'm in class, I'm
They
like,
don't
"Bruh."
they don't trust anything that's being, told to us in the media, especially
Mhm.
yeah, news sources.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think social media and their way to navigate social media is so advanced compared
Yes.
to me, you,
Mhm.
even though I'm ahead of them by
Right.
only 10 a decade, really,
Right, right, but it's
only
still
a
different.
decade, but there's
Yeah.
still a huge difference. I was like, yo,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm 20 years older than them than I actually am because,
Everything's changing so swiftly now.
yes,
Yeah.
and the way they're keeping up is phenomenal. And then in order to stay in order for me to survive as a teacher, I can't necessarily listen to the principals or like those that are up top because they're
The
not dealing
administration,
with them face
yeah.
front.
I feel like that's why a lot of teachers get burnt out. It's because of
Yeah.
the administration, because they're the ones, y'all are the ones that are plugged in with the kids.
Yeah, when
So
you're in it,
you
it's a little different. And they're
exactly. And
always
then you
like,
have the administration that has a whole other,
yes.
yeah,
And their
agenda.
agenda is clearly washed up. It's washed up. Like they don't want to hear the teachers though. They don't want to hear
Yeah.
us at the bottom. It's crazy.
Well, that's because again, the school systems are not really for the kids. It's
Yes.
just again, another form of corporation.
Uh-huh.
And nowadays, um, these school districts, they're protecting themselves. They don't want liability for anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I definitely know that as a parent, that it's really been about protecting the ones at the top.
Yeah.
It's really not about the kids.
That's really
So
what it
as
is.
parents, you really have to be very deliberate about your children's education.
Yep.
There are certain school districts, and I do appreciate Texas for that, that
Uh-huh.
are ranked much higher
Uh-huh.
on the academic scale. But when it comes to culture, when it comes to, investing in a child's self esteem,
Uh-huh.
there is none of that. It's
Yeah.
non existent.
Yeah.
Whereas, growing up in New York, where it's a lot more liberal,
Mhm.
we celebrated Black History Month to the T. We
Yeah.
celebrated so many things. We invested in the arts. So you were investing in the child's whole um, just a sense of being,
Yeah.
self-worth
Yeah.
instead of just academics, which is important.
Oh, yes.
But it's not the same here. So, your child may be very academically smart, but not know themselves. And I thank goodness that, I've had the exposure that I've had.
Uh-huh.
And, my ex-husband, my children's father, the same, even though he's from here, but we met in the military. So we've traveled the world together.
Yeah.
And because of that, my son, who's a junior in college now, um, he was a product of the Cypher ISD school
Mhm.
system. Again, very academically strong, but he decided to go to a HBCU
Mm.
because he was just like, I just need to be around
Yeah.
my people. I need to understand like who I am, what my purpose is.
Yep.
And although initially I was against it, I was just like, I don't know about that. But, I was just talking to him today, and as a junior, I'm like, "You made the right decision." Like,
Yeah.
PV was the best thing for you because you are truly a young man. Like,
Yeah.
you're grounded, you know who you are, you know where you're going.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a superpower for a Black man,
It is.
and the self-discipline that he has, I really admire because that's really our downfall is not having that self-discipline.
Yep.
But
Yep.
again, it comes from knowing who you are and knowing why
Mhm.
you're here.
That's true.
Mhm.
2 words, know thyself.
Right.
If you don't know thyself, you really won't have any self-discipline.
That's right.
So,
You be swayed back and forth just
yep.
like a wave.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's crazy 'cause I dealt with the same thing. Fort Knox, Kentucky, there's not
Mm.
much, culture.
Right.
There was not much culture. The only thing that was cultural was the basketball team. 'Cause
Okay. Okay.
I think,
And the
like
barbershop maybe.
yeah, the barbershop. But, like, most of the team players were, like on the basketball team were predominantly Black.
Mhm.
And I look back at my, school yearbook, and I'm like, "Yo, I understand why I felt so lost every day I went to school." Or, I felt so out of touch. 'Cause I was listening to Kendrick Lamar every day and trying to
Mhm.
figure out, like, what is there
So you
for me?
resonated with his spirit and Kendrick's very much
Yeah, I
like that.
resonate with him,
Mhm.
but when I take the headphones off, I'm in class and I'm like, "This is not it." The only subject I resonated most with was science because science was, like, about digging deeper
Mm.
deeper than just the surface of things. It was actually trying to get under the surface and actually see the deep rooted cause of everything.
Mhm. So
And
was that the onset of your spiritual journey?
yeah,
Mhm.
and when I found out that science actually means to know, the etymology of the word science means to know. And that's when I was like, man, I ended up in places that I was like, I felt like I shouldn't have been there, but somehow I ended up with my hometown, even though I didn't want to go there. But I ended up there and I ended up getting back to like culture. Because as a kid, I used to live there. My
Mhm.
mom was in overseas. I would live
Mhm.
there for about a year, 2 years maybe, and there was culture. You know, the town I lived in was predominantly Black, especially on our side. It was very segregated. I
Mhm.
actually learned that as I got older because my uncle, um, he spread wisdom to me, and that's where I understood. I said, "Wow, this is still going on, but it doesn't seem like because it's subtle
Mhm.
and it's subliminal."
Yeah.
So
And everyone just accepts it, so it's just the
yeah,
way it
when it's
is. Yeah.
subliminal, you can never catch the message unless you
Mhm.
actually just sitting there and becoming a people watcher and seeing for what it is. That's the only way.
Mhm.
But when you ripping and running and moving and stuff, you don't ever see it when you entertained by the music, the people that's entertained by music themselves,
Mhm.
and that's why um I kind of like feel like a DJ. You
Okay.
ever seen a DJ when they like play the
Oh
music?
yeah.
The people are moving to the music, but the DJ gotta stay
It's
focused.
folk exactly.
So that's how I feel in amongst my peers
So
a
you feel
lot.
like you're controlling the crowd?
I wouldn't say I'm controlling the crowd, but the crowd listen to music that's being played that I already
Mhm.
listen to all the time, but I'm not even phased by it. If anything, I just see it as entertainment, but the
Mhm.
entertainment can always be confused for control.
Right.
And so that's why I just feel I always felt left out because I was always pointing things out, even though it might not seem obvious to somebody else. It
Right.
was obvious to me. Obviously, my obvious thing that I was pointing out was gonna ruin
Mhm.
whatever they had going on, which was fun. So that's where my spiritual journey came from. Uh,
Mhm.
I would say listen to Kendrick Lamar, but also the death of my stepfather. He had a heart infection. He was in the military as well.
Mhm.
Really, really good man. He would always talk to me at night before I went to bed. Uh, it made me feel like a kid again. Like I was already a kid. I was like 16, but it made me feel like when I was a kid, I was 5 years old. My mom used to read stories to me.
Mhm. Nostalgic, yeah.
It was kind of like initiation to manhood, which most men do not get.
Mhm.
So I was very lucky. And sometimes when I look back, I'm like, I was thinking like I didn't really have initiation to manhood, but I did. It just wasn't what I thought it was going to be like.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's what it was. It was having those conversations with my stepdad at the time about what I want to do in life, where I want to go. And most times my answer was, I don't know, because I was 16.
Mhm.
But if we go ten years forward, I had experiences in life and a spiritual experience as well that actually brought me to this point where I want to be a teacher.
Mhm.
But I even tell my mentor here, I'm like, man, I don't want to be a school teacher though. Like, because being a school teacher is so it's funneled.
Right,
You
right.
can't take too many angles. Like if I'm gonna talk about history, I gotta talk about history. I
Right.
can't talk about the
Can't
individual.
deviate from the
Yeah.
textbook too
I
much,
can't be like,
yeah.
oh well this person here, Frederick Douglass, took these courses or read these books and focus on personal
Mhm.
development to get to even be abolitionist. I couldn't even do that. It takes too much
Yeah,
time.
it's
So
very limiting, I
yeah,
understand that. But a part of, like, learning about who you are, your true purpose, and I do believe we have multiple purposes in life, is
yeah,
knowing what you're good at,
hmm,
what you enjoy, and what you don't enjoy. Actually, most of it is knowing what you don't enjoy. So, um, it's all a part of your journey. Now you're a teacher, in the traditional sense, and
yeah,
you realize that you don't like certain things, and certain things do not resonate with who you are and how you want to teach and how you want to educate,
yeah,
which is great. But you wouldn't have known that unless you actually.
yeah. Actually, was in it.
Uh
So
huh. Exactly. So it's like, okay, so what's next? And
yeah,
you don't necessarily have to know what that is. You just got
yeah,
to keep walking it out. Maybe it's this. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Maybe
This
it
is a part
is.
of it.
Yeah, it has to be a part of
Yeah,
it.
it's a part of it.
And
It's all about the journey.
mhm,
So I try not to think too far ahead, although I know like what my
your end goal is.
exactly, but I just try to focus um like now, we're in planning season for 2024.
Yeah,
Like I know, what the next phase of me growing my business is. But I've had enough experience now, thankfully, not to put too much emphasis on certain things. Like I write
Yeah.
it down. I don't necessarily know how it's all going to come together, but I know that, you know, that's going to be, you know, the pivotal goals for the next year.
Okay.
And sometimes it changes,
Yeah.
and I tell people that when it comes to their money, whenever you set a budget,
Hmm.
we have to be realistic. Things change. Whenever you set a budget, whenever you set your short-term and long-term financial goals, um, make sure that you understand that it's fluid. It's meant to change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's something that
Okay.
you have to visit constantly,
Yeah.
just like your goals.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? You don't just do it in the beginning of the year and you're like, this is it. And then
Yeah.
when it doesn't go as
I
planned,
wish.
you quit. That's what most people do. Like when they're not able to stick to it, they quit and then
Yeah.
they beat themselves up. They're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I'm not good at this. I can't manage my finances." But it's meant to be a fluid thing
Yeah.
that you revisit all the time, just like your bank account. Like you're supposed to check your bank account every day.
Yeah.
Unless you just have certain systems in place already where you
Okay.
don't need to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in the very beginning phases of you being very intentional about how you spend your money, you do need to be checking your account all the
Hmm.
time. And you need, like I said, you need to be uh uh staying in tune with your budget. That way you become comfortable with it. And then you understand, okay, well, I do have control. I have to tweak this, I have to tweak that. And it's something
Yeah.
that I have to do all the time. Like, I used to budget and I was talking about this weekend. I used to
Hmm.
budget, for my nails, lashes, everything. But I realized like, okay, there's certain things I can definitely cut back on, you know what I mean? Especially
Yeah.
with the way things are advancing, and this is definitely for the ladies out here. The ladies will get this, but you know, a couple years ago, in order to have like the best lashes, you would have to have like the lash extensions. Like you
Yeah.
have to go to the salon, have them do it. That's like $100, right? For
Dang.
a full set. Then you pay like $50, $60 for the refills. Now there's so many other products that you can do yourself at home that make it
Mm.
look like you have that extension look.
Yeah.
You don't have to use like the strips with the glunky glue anymore. Like there's other things you can do that's much more inexpensive. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So budgets and when it comes to your money, those things are made to be adjusted, especially if you're self-employed, because as you know, as a solo entrepreneur or an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
you may have your projections, but the actual cash flow can vary.
Mm.
And sometimes it's feast or famine. You can make a whole lot of money in a
Yeah.
month, and in the next month you can make nothing. It really just depends, especially in our economic climate now. So it's important to have a fluid budget and not be attached. Don't attach yourself to your lifestyle.
Yeah.
I tell people that. And it's really hard in the South because it's a mentality here. Bigger is better. Everybody wants to
Yeah.
have the big house. It's like that's not what's the smartest thing to do,
Yeah.
especially from an investment standpoint. The homes that rent the fastest are the 3-bedroom homes,
Yeah.
the one-story homes.
Mm.
Those are the ones that rent the fastest. So
Oh
if
wow.
if you have a small family, you don't need a big old house.
Yeah.
And you're not keeping up with the Joneses. Keeping up with the Joneses will keep you broke. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? At the end of the day, um, from an investment standpoint, it's better to have 2 3-bedroom homes than, a 6-bedroom house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you can always rent that out. If you need to move around, make some changes.
Mhm.
So those are things that people need to understand, especially with where we're going. With interest rates and inflation,
Yeah.
you got to have assets because the dollar is depreciating every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we did go. So we know what the forecast of the market is gonna look like 2024 and 2025 because the guy was talking
Yeah,
about
he was
it.
saying
I was like, I had no
twenty
idea.
twenty five is going to be the year when everything stabilizes, but nobody has a crystal ball.
Yeah, he's human just like everybody else. It's kind of hard to be like, okay, but then again, the banks are
Yeah,
like recession is like the topic one day.
I know. I mean, we've
I'm
been in a
like,
recession for the last, what, 2 years now?
and don't nobody know.
Right.
It's just sad. So, but we definitely gotta do this again.
Mm-hmm.
it definitely
We
it was
have
a
so many
flow.
things in common based on
Yeah.
our life experiences,
Yeah,
although
yeah.
we're of different
Oh
generations.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, just that nomad life growing up, it creates,
And then being
yeah, a
addicted to it.
different
You
consciousness.
adopt it, right? I adopted it, and it's like
Mhm.
it becomes addictive because, like,
It's a part of who you are.
yeah, you can't
Yeah.
change it.
And then you just become like super independent and a natural leader.
Yep.
And then everybody's like,
And detached, and people are like, "You don't care, or you don't want to go. Why you not afraid to go here? Why you so easy talking to people?"
yeah.
You know,
Why
yeah,
why
I
you
would
do
get
white
that.
people stuff?
Right? Why are you CPT? I was like, "What is CPT? Why are you not CPT?" Which is colored people time. I was like, "I never heard of that."
Why are you punctual?
Yeah, exactly. It was like he's very punctual. And I'm like, what does that
Yeah.
word even mean? I never even heard of that word or like color people time, which is crazy to me.
I did
But
not expect that. That has been my experience, honestly.
yeah, the white
I
people
just
thing.
embrace it,
Yeah, you
you
have
know?
to. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
who you are. Like you can't
exactly.
change
You
that.
can't change it, but
Waking up at like 4 in the morning. I remember having like a girlfriend at the time who hated when I wake up at 4 in the morning. I'm like, I've been doing this my whole life. You can ask my mom. Like, I used to be up when she was up for work, and I didn't have a
yeah,
job. I was
4
just
o'clock
playing
is
video games.
military, yeah,
Yeah.
wake up time, reveille. That's
Yes.
reveille,
Don't
4
nobody know.
AM.
That's
I
yeah.
don't wake up at 4 AM, but
No
I do
more.
wake up early.
Yeah.
Not 4 AM.
Now it's 3 because the time went back.
Mm.
So yeah. Yeah, we definitely have to do this next time.
Yeah,
'Cause I
this
know you
was
gotta be
nice.
somewhere.
Yes.
But it's nice having Nasika.
Mhm.
Y'all gonna be seeing Nasika again because she has so many angles to her life as far as her life and then in business as well. So she is a very special guest, just like any other guest that I'll be having on again. But Nasika, I'm grateful that you came and it was good having you on.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, you gotta do one. You gotta do one. All
Yeah.
right, y'all. Midas Drop, we out.